we are at the brink. And Krystal, when you asked about, hey, do I think a civil war is a possibility? I think that we've already experienced many things that we would have thought were unthinkable 4 years ago, even when I was running.
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, we're in for more dystopian events and occurrences here in the U.S., including various forms of political violence.
Are you thinking just about January 6th, or are there other things that lead you to that place of feeling like it's a nation on the brink?
So that there's January 6th as the most evident, but also the attack on Paul Pelosi, the shooting up of the congressional softball game, the self-reported assassin who was going to target a Supreme Court justice, the first person showing up at the FBI headquarters with a gun and then gets killed. So these are all relatively isolated occurrences, but the discontent in the country just keeps on going up and up by any quantitative measure. You probably know about this guy, Peter Turchin, who wrote a book that came out recently called End Times, and he has this model about political stress. The political stress index in the U.S. is at literal Civil War levels. Last time it was at this level was 1860. So unfortunately, I think it's going to get worse, not better, because if you think about the dynamics we're in, we're hyper-polarized. And then, media organizations, with the main exception of Breaking Points, separating us into ideological teams and tribes, saying, hey, it's your team, and then social media pouring gasoline on the whole thing. And which of these is going to get better? I mean, unfortunately, they're all probably going to get worse.
So I agree on the political instability point. I think once we cross over into the line of like, is it going to reach a civil war? That's where I have a hard time conceptualizing that.
So when you say civil war, Colin, and this is one of the reasons why that term is in some ways the wrong term. So civil war would think, hey, there's an organized political rebellion. I mean, obviously that's unrealistic.
Like a literal war.
Where you have the U.S. Is so dominant militarily and whatnot that like imagining some kind of insurrection that had any chance of succeeding is ridiculous. But Stephen, through his, unfortunately, his painstaking research says, look, civil war is technically defined as 1,000 victims of political violence in a year. And can you imagine that happening in the United States of America?
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I could see that.
That is, so can you imagine low levels of radicalist violence in the U.S.? Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
And then could that reach a point where you had dozens of deaths cumulatively? Yes. Yeah, that is realistic.
So I could definitely see, and a lot of this hinges on the 91 criminal charges against Trump, but if he gets found guilty, I could see riots. I could see some instances of targeted political violence. You brought up Paul Pelosi before. I think that's a good example of it. I feel like we could see more of that. But yeah, I mean, beyond that, I don't know, Krystal, let me ask you what you think. Do you think that would like snowball into something worse? Because I feel like Trump's lost a little bit of a punch because every time now he's under some indictment, he's like, everybody come support me at the courthouse or whatever, and like 7 people show up. And I feel like that might be because the last time he told them to show up at January 6th, there were a lot of feds there. These people got brought up on charges. A lot of them are in prison now, so they feel like I don't want to get burned again.
Yeah.
What do you make of all that?
In my opinion, it's kind of a matter of degrees, like Andrew is talking about. Do I think that there would be another like North versus South or rural versus urban or college educated or whatever, red versus blue, like nationwide? No, I don't see that. But you have enough who have really taken to heart some very extreme fringe views where, I mean, think about January 6th, right? Those people who I think should be held accountable for their actions, I support the sentences against them, all of that stuff. Many of them thought that they were like patriots.
Totally.
Of course.
Doing an honorable, like the righteous thing, like that we're back in 1776 kind of a deal. And so when you have so much, like a sizable chunk of the population that really sees things that way, that sees things in these existential terms, like you can't look at that landscape and not see some danger there, for sure.
Yeah, I became friends with the late, great Norm Macdonald, the comedian, and he said that the problem isn't good versus evil, it's good versus good, where the people on the other side genuinely think that they're fighting the good fight and doing the right thing. And to your point, Krystal, there are millions of Americans who have very, very strong points of view that are very different from mine.
Yeah.
But they think that they'll be defending the country by taking actions that might, unfortunately, include harming someone at some point.